Hello world, it's Berto Prey 5 Cupla, and welcome to my reaction and review of Star Trek Picard, Season 3, Episode 7, Dominion. Last week was what I thought was perhaps the best episode of the season. This episode, decidedly less so. We left off last week on the cliffhanger. Riker was captured by Vadic, and we found out that Deanna Troi had presumably also been captured and was going to be used to presumably break Riker into giving out all the info he had, and we were not promised per se, but assumed we were going to get a continuation of that story this week, and we get none of that. We barely see Riker. In fact, we don't see Riker. We don't see Deanna. We have zero real follow-up on what happened after he gets captured. We do start with seeing a past Trek actor. So this is, spoilers are starting right now. So if you haven't left, be aware. It's about to be spoiled. So the episode starts, we get some scenes of cloudy space, and we're in a bunch of spaceship parts, and it's the Chintaka scrapyard, the Chintaka system, famous from Star Trek Deep Space Nine to Dominion War. I guess nobody cleaned up all the floating space debris, so they just turned Chintaka into a debris yard. And we see a voice, and we hear a voice. I see the voice because I have closed captioning on. So it spoils it for me before we hear the voice, or I even see the face. Seven is talking with Captain Tuvok. Captain Tuvok is on the view screen. Seven is in the captain's chair, and she is asking when did Tuvok last talk to Janeway, and he says, not recently. Immediately, I know this is not Tuvok, because Vulcans are very precise. He would never say not recently. He would have said 36 days, 4 months, whatever. 4 months, 36 hours, and 2 minutes ago. That's what Vulcans do. So Seven brings up what's been happening with Ro, and she's, saying we have to be really careful who we talk to, and she's like, listen, can you help us reach other people that we trust? And he says, well, you guys are fugitives, so it's going to be pretty difficult. And then they've got some other bridge officers off to the side, off camera, checking every voice comment that Tuvok makes to see if it's really him, like they're running it through a voice detector. And it comes back inconclusive. Surprising. Anytime a test is going to determine something on TV, it always comes back inconclusive. I remember the most famous time on The Simpsons when they find a skeletal remains of an angel, and they send the bones to a museum to have a test conducted by a scientist to see if these are actual remains. And the scientist comes running back because Lisa doesn't believe, obviously, it's an angel, because Lisa is an atheist and a scientist, and but Ned Flanders believes it's a real angel, so the town is divided. And the scientist comes running. He's like, I have the test results. And everybody's waited. And he says, the results are, and he opens, inconclusive. And at the end of the episode, it turns out that it was a fake after all. They were not real angel bones. It was just a cheap fake made by the land developers, because they were developing a mall, and They called the mall like Angel Falls Mall or something. And so Lisa goes to the scientist. She's like, I just don't understand. Why didn't your test reveal that it was a fake? And he's like, I'm going to be honest with you, Lisa. I never ran any tests. And it was just so funny because, you need that to happen for the drama. And so anytime I see an inconclusive test on, a science show, I just think back to that funny Simpsons moment before the Simpsons became trash. Anyway, back here. So the computer can't tell if it's really Tuvok. So 7, instead of saying, hey, Tuvok, we have to be absolutely sure you're the real you because changelings infiltrated everything. I need to ask you some questions that only the real Tuvok would know. And the real Tuvok, if he was real, or the fake Tuvok, if he was pretending to be fake, in either case would have said completely understandable. Go ahead, shoot. Instead, she works in something about her games playing Chalto on Voyager. And he says, well, I don't need to remind you, you beat me countless times playing Chalto. And so 7 feels better. Like, okay, only the real Tuvok would know that. I mean, it's not like they've been celebrities and books probably have been written about their time in the Delta Quadrant. And surely that would have been, it would have been the media event of the century. A starship comes back from the opposite side of the galaxy. And like every crew member of Voyager would be an instant celebrity, especially since now in Picard, we see that there is a news service akin to CNN or Fox News of today. And they're we know, even in DS9, that the media existed and, the people were giving interviews and stuff, notable people. Harry Kim must have had a line of people waiting at his parents' house for him, trying to get him to do a holo novel deal. And everybody on Voyager should have been Insta celebrities. And things like this was probably well known. But for some reason, 7 was okay with that. So she trusts him, even though I know not to trust him because he's not been precise. So now Tuvok says something ridiculously stupid. He says, if you can arrange a meeting, then I can help you. Why would he need to meet? Why would the real Tuvok need to meet with 7 in person? It makes 0 sense, but 7 doesn't seem to care that Tuvok suggested that. And she says, okay. She's like, yeah, that's fine. Well, maybe she does. She knows a safe place. She says, Alcon 7. She once went there to a procedure to stabilize her neural pathways. And Tuvok says, of course, anywhere you want. And now she knows it's the fake Tuvok. She says, a Vulcan would never go to Alcon 7 after the anti-Colinar demonstration and my neural pattern. It was stabilized by you on Voyager. Well, first off, lady, if you needed one neural stabilization, who's to say you didn't need a second one? But the anti-Colinar demonstration, a Vulcan would never go there. I don't know about that. The real reason is the real Tuvok simply would never force you to meet in person when there's no logical reason to do so. So 7 is now pissed. She knows it's fake Tuvok. Fake Tuvok starts to crack a smile, and Geordi starts yelling that they're tracing the signal, and like all of the bridge crew are off to the sides. So it's like 7's the only one on screen. So 7's like, what have you done with Tuvok? And he says, all I can tell you is that when we're done with him, when we're done with all of you, death will be a relief. So Tuvok is for all purposes dead. I don't know. Now Picard comes on screen and he's like, where's Will Riker? What have you done with him? And we see Riker, but it's a dead Riker, like a dead body of Riker talking. He's like, I'm dead just like you, Admiral. And Geordi has to cut the connection immediately. And then we get connection lost just in the nick of time for whatever that meant. And Geordi's like, Admiral, we can't keep doing this. He's like, maybe Geordi says, maybe we should just accept it. The Geordi who would never accept Data died in TNG. The Geordi who himself was thought to be dead and was really alive in TNG. That Geordi is like, maybe we should just accept Riker's dead. Let's give up. Let's give up on Captain Riker. Because he would so much give up on us. Then we get the opening credits, part 7, Dominion. And there's a lot of lack of Dominion, the Dominion, in this episode, by the way. If you thought the title was giving away the plot, I'm not really sure what the plot was. So now we go and Picard, we get a decent shot coming in from the outside of the ship through the windows, and we got Picard and Beverly and Geordi, and we've got some exposition. So at some point, Worf and Raffi left the ship. How did they leave the ship? Nobody knows, because remember, they came on the ship. We never saw the La Sirena. We don't know, did they stash the La Sirena somewhere else? I don't think the La Sirena could fit in the shuttle bay. So let's just not ask. Let's get all the way off Terry Matalas' back about how Worf and Raffi left. Did they take a shuttle? Did they take the La Sirena? Was the La Sirena following them while cloaked the entire time? Maybe, who knows? Let's get off Terry Matalas' back on how Worf and Raffi left, but they did. So they're monitoring Starfleet security at Exoport, whatever the hell that means. And they've confirmed so there's no mention of Will Riker in custody. Like Starfleet was going to make an official note that, yeah, we've got him in custody. Geordi is saying that they're running out of places. They're running out of places to hide. And Picard is saying, well, we're running out of time. There's now just 36 hours before Frontier Day. Last episode started at 72 hours, ended at 48 hours. Now we're 36 hours to Frontier Day. Oh, by the way, Worf and Raffi, also not in this episode. There's no Worf, there's no Raffi, there's no Will. Well, we got 2 seconds of Will Riker on the view screen, and it was a dead Will. It was a changeling impersonating a dead William Riker. And when I say dead, I mean he looked like a zombie. Like his skin was gray. He just looked like a dead body, an animated dead body. And there's no Deanna. We have Vadic. We have Geordi. We have Data. They can never really afford to pay all the actors to show up at once, I guess. So, yeah. So now we have Beverly talking about weighing. There's a morality question weighing on her. Basically, she doesn't know if she could do a biological exploit of them. Basically, another virus or something to kill them all. That she could make one. The solution could be biological, but it's tantamount to genocide if you're going to target a species And Picard basically ends up saying, maybe work on this virus anyway, and we'll worry about deploying it if we get the chance. So Picard is saying that he thinks the reason they took his body is because he was supposed to be part of Frontier Day, but he would require genetic confirmation of him to participate in the Frontier Day activities. So maybe they took his dead body and they want Jack's blood to somehow make a perfect copy of Picard's body, which makes zero sense. Beverly is like, maybe Jack's DNA can fill in holes like frog DNA from Jurassic Park. It doesn't make any lick of sense. They have Picard's entire body, which has his DNA. Why would they need Jack? So now we go, and Geordi and his other daughter, whose name I forget, not Sydney, they were working on data/lore/B4/lol/soon, and we just call them Data now. And so they wake up Data, and Data thinks he was on the Scimitar or the Enterprise, and they're filling in the facts that it's been a long time. And then in the middle of talking to Data, Lore comes out, and he's like, oh, that would explain why you're so old. And Lore makes a whole bunch of jokes about Picard being so old. And if I'm Picard, I would have just held up a fucking mirror and says, hey, look at you, buddy. You're no spring chicken yourself. I've always looked old, but now you look terrible. But of course, nobody does anything. So they actually try to ask Lore, like, well, will you help us? He's like, fuck you guys. He doesn't say it. To their credit, he doesn't say it. You know, the one character I might have excused an F-bomb from this season would have been Lore. But he's like, listen, I hate you all. I want to vomit on you. So Geordi's like, listen, this android is far harder to work on than old Data was. I have no way of knowing what I'm doing. I can't do anything. All I know is that they purposely split. There's a physical split between Lore and Data, and if I do anything to interfere, I might destroy that, and Lore would be able to completely take over. And like, everybody's like, well, why the hell did they even put Lore in this body? And I know why. The entire reason Lore was in this body is for this episode, because they need Lore to come out at the most inopportune time and cause even extra stress. There's no other reason logical for Lore to be part of this. So Picard, even talking to Lore, is like, Data, please, if you can hear me, we need your help. Tell me why the changelings have taken my body. And so Data comes back for a minute, and he's like, uh-oh, Dr. Soong's research on your dead corpse says that your previous diagnosis of Irrimatic syndrome is in doubt. There might be something special about your brain. And then Lore takes back over. We never get more of an answer. They go back and forth a few times, and Data just like, please help me, Picard, please. And Picard gives the order to shut him off again. And Picard tells Geordi, last time I spoke to Data, Data wanted me to, asked me to kill him, and I did. Now he's asking for my help again. He's like, we got to do something. And Geordi's like, I don't know what to do. I can't. This is way more, infinitely more complex than our Data. So Geordi can't help. A lot of technobabble reasons. So they leave Data be for now. And we get a scene change to the Shrike. And the flying mystery face is talking to Vadic, and Vadic is again reporting that she has nothing to report. She says in some exposition, Riker and Deanna are proving harder to break than she thought, and she doesn't anticipate getting any info out of them in the time they have left. And the scary flying face monster says to Vadic that if you don't get me what I need, it's going to be bad. And he says, your kind is easy. It's by nature malleable. Basically says you and your kind will find its own existence meaningless. And to me, it very much sounds like the Borg. I think this face is somehow the Borg communicating with Vadic. It talks about resistance at some point. So the face basically tells Vadic, you have to find Jack. There's no other choice. There's now 36 hours. So Vadic takes her seat again, and she looks a bit scared. Now we cut back to the Titan on a turbo lift. A couple of crew members get out, and Jack and Geordi La Forge are on a turbo lift alone together for some reason, and Jack is flirting a little, and we get an internal monologue of Geordi La Forge. I don't ever remember in Star Trek history, did we get an internal monologue of a character before? Offhand, I can't remember hearing this. So Geordi La Forge is asking herself if Jack is flirting with her, and he says he's charming. And we realize now that it's not Sydney internal monologue. It's Jack Crusher has learned how to read Sydney's thoughts. So Jack Crusher heard Sydney say, I hope he touches my hand. And so Jack touches her hand, and Sydney gets out of the turbo lift, turns around and asks Jack, why did you touch my hand? And Jack's eyes start glowing red, and the vines start showing up, but Sydney doesn't see the eyes turn red, even though she's looking directly at him. So I guess we know when his eyes glow red, that's just for us, the audience. It's not really happening in real life. And for some reason, despite Sydney saying, I hope he touches my hand, and then he does touch her hand, like a typical woman, sorry, Mama Frey, she now seems completely revolted and turned off. Like, how dare he knew what I was thinking and did it. And she storms off. She's not happy. So Jack keeps going on the turbo lift, I guess, to the bridge, and sees Admiral Picard, says, hey, Admiral, we should talk. And Captain Shaw's in this episode. They find the Shrike. The Shrike is on its way, I guess. Shaw is like, don't let the Shrike find us. And Jack asks Admiral Picard if he can have a word. So, of course, they go into the ready room. And Jack is like, listen, I can't deal with people dying over me. And Will Riker was nothing but super nice to me. So I want to go trade myself for Riker. What do you say? And Picard is like, nope, not going to happen. Jack says, it's not worth it. I'm not worth it. Kind of believe you there, Jack. Jack says he's always felt different, like there's something wrong with him. Deep down, something's wrong with him. Picard asks, well, what's wrong with you? So Jack is saying, I can hear things in my mind. And Picard asks, well, what are you hearing? And instead of saying, well, I can hear the thoughts of other crew members, he says nothing at all. And Picard says, you don't deserve any of this. Jack is like, well, maybe I do. And Picard's like, I'm not going to give up on you. Don't give up either. And Jack is like, I love a good fight when it's fair. I like when I'm not the one down on my back, though. Well, of course, everybody loves a good fight that they can win. And Picard is like, oh, I just had a stroke of genius. No, he doesn't say it. He's like, I think I know how we can turn the tables on Vadic. So then we move to open space in the Alpha Quadrant. And there is a Vulcan ship and the Titan. And they both have their power down. The lights are off. And I keep wanting to say the Shrek. The Shrike warps in. And they're saying the Shrike's crew is talking in their bird language, so there's subtitles. And they're saying the Titan's warp core is offline, emergency power only. Vadic is looking, she's so happy. She's life signs, and they're having trouble. It might be radiation from the Vulcan warship. So there's a Vulcan warship next to the Titan. And Vadic is like, Jack's alive. Slippery. Subspace transmissions. And there's a recording coming from the Vulcan ship. And this is the VSS something. They've engaged the fugitives. And they're saying that life signs are down. Not life signs. Systems are down on both ships. We've disabled their ship. They're incapable of fleeing. And they're also, they need to get weapons back. We're sending you last known coordinates. And there's an incoming torpedo. And so then both ships were dead in the water. Now, okay, so I'm watching this. I'm like, oh, they found a Vulcan ship to play with them. Because obviously this was part of Picard's plan. So I figure at some point we're going to find out that there was a friendly Vulcan they knew who could come over with their entire warship and just hang out here. And they could make a fake log and transmit it. And that when the time was right, the Vulcan ship was going to turn on and they were both going to fight the Shrike. No. They never explain. Where did this Vulcan warship come from? How did it make this log? I mean, it's just called open space. Did they just find a Vulcan ship, a derelict ship with a Vulcan crew able to make a Vulcan log and send a Vulcan transmission? None of this makes any fucking sense. I am so angry that I am so fucking sick that I cannot be more angry. It is beyond ridiculous. Where did this ship come from? How did it get here? How did Picard pull this out of his ass? We've reached peak absurdity. Peak absurdity. A fucking Vulcan warship materializes from thin air, apparently, able to do whatever the fuck they wanted to do. No explanation. Not a single line of dialogue. So even the idiots on Vadic's crew are like, this is clearly a trap. And Vadic is like, well, shit, we're gonna go anyway. He's right there. Jack is right here. He can taste her, touch him. She can touch him. She said, don't you hear the voices? Tick tock goes the ancient clock. Oh my God. She's like, we're almost out of time. We're going. And her number one is like, this is a trap. But whatever. Oh, and then for reasons unknown, again, she's like, we're taking a shuttle. Don't use the transporter. They have been using their transporter on the Shrike the entire series. They transported many a times. Now, for plot reasons only, they're going to take a shuttle over to the Titan, when if they had just beamed to the bridge of the Titan, this entire episode and the entire series would presumably be over. They would have had the Titan, the entire crew, the entire ship, and game over. So they take a shuttle. I guess they leave the Shrike completely empty. Maybe there's 1 or 2 people left behind, but it's quite a large boarding party for a shuttle. And I guess the shuttle bay, I don't know, even though power is out, is the shuttle bay just open? Like, how does the shuttle attach to the Titan? Oh, maybe there's an external dock, but we don't see we don't see it attach. I guess there was no money for that. We just see Vadic walking down a hallway with, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 guards with her. She's looking for life signs, and she says they're scattered like rats. What would a shapeshifter know about rats? Why would they use that analogy? And then, who shows up? Jack Crusher. Jack walks out to meet her, and he says, everyone's dead. It's just him. Vadic's like, not everyone. I want to take you to a better place. And Jack says, what the hell does that mean? And I'm like, I'm not sure what it means either. He's like, what place? Vadic says, it'll be much better to show you than to tell you. Well, of course it would. It would be better for the writer, who doesn't have to tell him and, let some of the intrigue go. So Jack says, well, you have to catch me first. And he starts running, and Vadic orders all of her other people to follow him. And so Jack starts running, and he's ready. And of course, it was a trap. And who is part of this trap? Geordi La Forge. It's Jack and Sydney with a bunch of with phasers fighting a bunch of changelings, chasing them. Why would Geordi La Forge be the other person on this trap? Again, this is peak absurdity. There have to be security officers on this ship. Even if every security officer beamed off, which didn't happen. Even if every security officer beamed off, Geordi would not allow his daughter to be the trap bait. Okay? She is a bridge officer. She is a pilot. She is not the person you're going to have running through the ship, firing and killing shapeshifters. I'm sorry. You would find somebody else better qualified. Peak absurdity. You have Geordi La Forge and Jack alone killing a bunch of changelings. And they're using their phasers, presumably set to heavy kill. And so they're running, and the plan was that they run down different hallways, and the Titan crew is putting up force fields. So you separate a bunch of the changelings, and then you have them all in groups of 1 or 2 behind different force fields. And so at the end, everybody's trapped in a different force field. Unfortunately, Jack and Sydney don't appear to be trapped together. But Jack runs back and sees Vadic. Vadic comes towards Jack, and Jack tells the bridge to drop Charlie, and that turns on the force field that traps Vadic. Vadic's number 1 is still alive, and Jack shoots at him, but he runs away. He just runs away, and nobody chases him. So Vadic is in custody now, and Geordi La Forge is running, and she catches up with Jack. And oh no, the other guy comes. Oh my God, the other guy is in front of Sydney. He lets her go. He could have shot Geordi La Forge dead 10 times. He could have shot Geordi La Forge 10 times. he lets her just get away, run from like inches. He has a phaser aimed at Sydney's back. And I guess he's too honorable to shoot somebody in the back. He's no Garrick. It's the safest time. Anyway, he will not shoot a human in the back. So as long as you have your back to him, you're safe. Sydney runs and catches up with Jack, and then they lock him in behind a force field too. So now everybody's trapped. There's force fields all around Jack and Sydney. They're trapped. The shapeshifters are trapped. Vadic is trapped. And Geordi is with his other daughter, and Data/Lore is just standing around. And Geordi's having trouble with the computer system. He was about to beam Jack and Sydney out of their, because they're trapped behind force fields. So he was going to beam Jack and Sydney back to engineering. And, transporter denied. It says on the screen, transport denied. And Geordi can't understand what's going on. Who's doing this? And obviously you know who's doing it. It's Lore. The only fucking reason he's on this show. And Geordi and his daughter leave engineering for a second, and the doors close behind them. And then Lore/Data walk up to the door and look at him, and Geordi knows it's Lore. And he goes, Lore. And that's the Lore from the trailer. So Lore is about to cause a whole heap of trouble. So now we get Beverly talking to Vadic, and Beverly is debriefing. No, not debrief. Interrogate. Beverly is trying to interrogate Vadic. So Beverly says it would be a challenge even for you to escape because the force field is sealed. It's a sealed force field. You have no way out. So she's like, you must really want my son. You're the one who was hunting us. Why? Why were you hunting us? And Vadic laughs. Beverly picks up a phaser. And she says, I took an oath to do no harm. But you should know I'm rethinking that promise. And then she powers on the phaser. And Vadic is saying, oh, you're adorable. I thought you were going to interrogate me. But you've overplayed your hand. You've given up. You started with your end game. She's like, unless. And then Picard comes up behind her, and she's like, unless he's the play understanding. It's the classic good cop, bad cop. Beverly's the bad cop, and Picard's going to be good cop. So Vadic says, yeah, good luck. And Picard says, we know what you stole, and we have a good idea why you wanted it. For Frontier Day, you're going to use my body and my blood to make a near-perfect double. Again, this makes no sense. Shapeshifters have always been able to make perfect doubles of somebody. And if genetic testing could have tested shapeshifters, then why didn't they do genetic testing in Deep Space Nine? So Vadic does give out the info that Jack Crusher isn't for her. She doesn't really give a shit about Jack. So Picard says, Captain Vadic, there's no escape for you. Your best hope is to be forthcoming. So Picard says he understands the travesty of the Dominion War. And we get the only really important part, I hesitate to say, of this episode. Vadic explains her origin story. So she and like 7 or 8 other changelings were kept as prisoners of war on Daystrom Station, and it was experiments that were done on them and they're retconning this because this didn't happen, but experiments done on them by presumably, I guess, Section 31, that either A, came up with the virus, and B, they also experimented on them to make them into the monsters they are and give them the ability to be better shapeshifters so that they could be used to shapeshift and spy on other governments. Absolute ridiculousness, absurdity, retconning of the highest proportions. Shapeshifters already had the ability to be perfect replicants. They got into Starfleet already. They were able to take over and be admirals. They had the perfect ability to do so. It doesn't make any sense. But anyway, we find out why Vadic takes the face, the shape she does. It turns out that that's the face of the scientist that was working on her. And it's ridiculous because they were experimenting on her by injecting her with needles. How do you inject a lump of goo with a needle? I mean, it's old. This old, like 1950s style big metal needle instead of a hypo spray. And Vadic is like, it was painful and torturous. How is it painful to put a fucking needle in a drop of goo? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, this is just awful writing. This is just a quick aside. I had to edit this in after the fact because I forgot, and it's an important issue. Vadic mentions that the shapeshifters had to steal the cure, that the cure wasn't given into them by Starfleet. She corrects Picard. She's like, you didn't give it. Is that how your history records it? That you gave us the cure? She said, no, we had to steal the cure. And at first I'm like, But then I realized, no, Odo didn't steal the cure. Dr. Bashir and Miles O'Brien stole the cure from Section 31. They put their lives on the line to save Odo. Dr. Bashir and Miles O'Brien, solids, put their lives on the line to do the right thing and get the cure, which then they gave to Odo. The shapeshifters didn't steal the cure. Solids stole the cure. This entire bullshit about Vadic, it's canonically wrong. I don't have any excuse. There is no excuse why a Star Trek fan should have let this go. Bag on to the rest of the... And I apologize for not knowing the word syringe when I was recording this at, ridiculous in the morning. I feel so bad. My diction is greatly improved, but if I re-recorded it now, I would never get it out. Back on with the rest of the reaction. So now we cut back to Geordi, and they're trying to reason with Lore to get the transporters back. And now Lore is not only is he taking out the transporters, he's going to start turning off the force fields. So the daughter is like, why is Lore doing this? And Geordi's like, he just loves the chaos. And then we go back to Sydney and Jack, and the shapeshifter is saying to Jack, she's going to die for you. And now Jack is looking at Sydney, and he hears her thoughts. Sydney's asking, why is he looking at me like that? His eyes glow again. And then the force field goes down, and she yells, Jack. And then we cut back to Vadic, and Vadic is still telling her story. She's like, do you like symphony? And Picard's like, I didn't know that you had music in the Great Link. And she didn't. She said, but when she was a prisoner, she talked about how the Daystrom station had music, and she talks about the woman who experimented on her again. Oh, and we get the name. It was called, and I thought I thought she said Project Prometheus. I almost laughed my ass off, but actually it was called Project Protus. Project Protus. And I'll be honest, I have no effing idea what Protus refers to. I probably should have looked it up before I started. Proteus. I guess it's something from Greek mythology. I don't know, but that's what it's called. Project Protus. Proteus. He's described Proteus as an early sea god, noted for being versatile and capable of assuming many forms. That's why it's Project Proteus. He could assume any form. I can't believe, again, this is like 1950 style needle that you see in old TV shows with a stainless steel tip. Vadic says she was in more pain than any being should be expected to endure. And I understand what she's saying. Yeah, you feel a little bad. You feel a little bad for Vadic. You really do. I mean, the writing and the fact that now they're saying humans gave the shapeshifters better shapeshifting ability is ridiculous. But you feel bad. So anyway, one day Vadic realized, hey, I can kill this bitch. And she does. She just creates like a harpoon out of her goo and harpoons this woman through the heart. And she dies. So then Vadic assumes her shape. And then I guess Vadic lets all of her other shapeshifter brothers and sisters out. And any of the other shapeshifters who wanted to get what Vadic had, which was the ability to perfectly replicate a human being, even though they had that ability in DS9 already, but they could trade their long lives for Vadic's ability. And so shapeshifters who wanted to join her fight against the Federation have given up their long lives to become part of her mission. She says, the Federation took her family. Now she's going to take yours. So that's her motivation. I thought we pretty much knew most of it. I mean, this could have been a 5-minute, 2-minute exposition scene in any other episode. That was really the only high point of the episode, or the knowledge drop. Everything else is awful. So then we get a scene again of the Titans still appearing dead in space. Again, there's this Vulcan warship, also dead in space. No idea how it got there. Now we have the Shrike. Its lights are on, so somebody's still on the Shrike. So Sydney is saying to Jack that the regulators are failing. The force fields are about to come down. They're really milking this. And Geordi is trying to reason with Lore. He's saying, Data, are you in there? Please don't let this happen. Now, Beverly and Picard are talking about how Vadic is too calm. If we allow her to live, she has a plan. So we got to kill her. Vadic can overhear them. So I don't know if they're purposely trying to let Vadic know they're about to kill her or what. But if they were trying to hide that from her, they did a piss poor job. Part of me thinks everything that's happening with Vadic is happening in the holodeck. That somehow they trapped her and everybody in the holodeck, and she doesn't know that this isn't real, because they really just don't seem to be taking it all that seriously. I don't know. I have that feeling, but if that turns out to be true, we're not going to learn it this episode. So Beverly is like, if we allow her to leave, she could take Jack. And so we got to kill her. We've got to kill her. Beverly asked Picard, why did she take the face of her torturer? Picard said to remind her of her hate. And Picard pulls out his phaser. He's like, we won't get anything more from her. Ready to die. Geordi is begging Lore. He's telling him about Data, how when Data died, he was broken, but then Data's memory put him back together. He was such a good friend. Lore doesn't give a shit. Picard is talking to Beverly. Have we so fundamentally changed that we're going to compromise everything we believed in and kill our own prisoner? And Beverly says, yep, I'm losing my compass. Beverly said, the moment we allowed it aboard, we invited death on the ship. Picard again pulls out his phaser. He makes the, yep, time to kill her. Powers up the phaser. They both look at each other and agree. Of course, at this moment, Lore and Data are still fighting. Lore takes back over again. Geordi's like, what do you want? And Lore's like, just what these changelings want. Survival. It's human. He's going to level the playing field. The enemy of my enemies is you know. And there he goes. He shuts off all the force fields. He's got full control of the ship. Seven is on the bridge, trying to get the force fields back. But the force fields go down, and Vadic turns into a shapeshifter goo and jumps into a hole. And somehow Picard and Beverly miss shooting her. They take 20 shots and miss her completely. Now Jack and Sydney are fighting hand-to-hand combat against the shapeshifters. Why the shapeshifters don't just turn into pointy blades and kill Sydney, God only knows. But Jack is able to fight off one shapeshifter because he becomes a killing machine, as always. But then Sydney is taken by another shapeshifter who just throws her head into a force field to knock her out. And Geordi, of course, has Sydney's video on a screen, so he's mad. He's like, God damn it, Lore, let her go. Okay, this is beyond ridiculous, but so there's a force field. Lore put up a force field to prevent Jack from helping Sydney. Sydney, who was knocked out a second ago, is awake again, and she has to fight a shapeshifter on her own. Now, the shapeshifter has a gun. For some reason, didn't want to use it. Maybe got rid of the gun. So hand-to-hand combat against a shapeshifter who could turn into a sword and kill her. But what happens is Jack makes a telekinetic or telepathic connection to Sydney and tells her what moves to make to fight off the shapeshifter. So Sydney La Forge now has the unstoppable killing powers of Jack Crusher via a mental link. So Jack is doing the moves, and Sydney is also doing the same moves and using it to ultimately kill the shapeshifter attacking her. Meanwhile, Geordi is begging Data to open the doors, even though Lore is in control. Sydney kills the shapeshifter, and Data takes over. Once the danger is past, Data takes over. He's back, and he's accessing field regulators. And now that Sydney has already killed the shapeshifter, she comes back to Jack. She's like, what happened? Was that you in my head? And she holds the gun up to Jack. And Jack's saying, Sydney, it's me. Please, you have to trust me. And now Vadic is walking down the hallway. So Sydney runs with Jack. And not the shapeshifter didn't die. He was just knocked out. How convenient. So now Beverly is looking through the files of the shapeshifters that were worked on Daystrom Station. And one of the chemicals they put in them have a half-life of 100 years. So they just have to scan for that chemical, and they can find the shapeshifters. So they find them on Deck 9. They tell Captain Shaw. Now Captain Shaw is walking with actual security officers, and they engage the shapeshifters. And of course, the shapeshifters take out the 2 security officers, but Captain Shaw is still alive. But a shapeshifter comes up behind Shaw and pushes him into the turbo lift. So Vadic, Shaw, and one of his guards, her guards, get in the turbo lift, and it said they're coming to the bridge. Seven's like, they're not taking the bridge, and a second later they take the bridge. I thought Shaw was dead, but apparently they just beat the shit out of him. All the shapeshifters on the ship, I don't know where all these other shapeshifters came from. I guess they didn't kill them when they had the chance. So every shapeshifter now enters the bridge. All the bridge officers they hand over the bridge. 7, they don't kill anybody. Vadic tells 7 to open a channel. Vadic is going to address her ship, and she gives a little speech about how I predicted that this was how it was going to go down. I told you how this was going to happen back in episode 1. It's like, attention, crew of the Titan. I'm the new captain. She said, but you did prove yourselves worthy, though. You're not without guile. Now, Data, Geordi, everybody's listening. She's like, I warned you it was going to end this way. Captain Shaw is on the floor of his own bridge. So why does she want the Titan? By all accounts, the Shrike was a better armed ship. It really doesn't make much sense. She says the being fluid means knowing what the river knows, and all the rivers lead to the sea. This is where we were always going. And they're growing to bring Jack Crusher where he most belongs. Vadic looks at the captain's seat. She dramatically sits in the captain's seat of the Titan. And she touches her hand like she can't wait to report this. She says, I am Vadic, captain of the USS Titan. And Jack, my dear, if you can hear me, he can. It's time you learned who you truly are. Dun, 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 dun. End of episode. Do you think next episode we're going to learn who Jack truly is? Or are we going to learn what happened to Riker and Deanna? My guess is they're going to put it off yet another episode. So end of episode. Easily the worst episode of the season. One of the worst episodes of Star Trek I've ever seen. I have still, where did that Vulcan ship come from? How did Worf and Rafi leave? I mean, so much ridiculousness. The entire premise of why lore was even included in the new data was just for this scene. Sydney and Jack able to do telepathic communication. This is a fundamentally broken episode. And I'm going to give this an official 0 out of 10. There's no reason to watch this episode. There's no reason to watch this episode at all. 0 out of 10. Guys, I am pretty sick. I don't know if I'll be able to do a review next week. I hope so. But if I don't, thank you so much for hanging out and being part of my channel. I will be back as soon as I can. I don't know if it'll be next week or not. Kapla all, bird out.